It was one cold morning in June-July of 1981 in Nairobi when a friend, Patrick Kigundu, who was at the Kenya School of Law, walked into my little apartment in the doctor's mess at Kenyatta National Hospital with John. I had never met John before and had no idea why they had come that early. John had arrived that morning from Uganda. Patrick went ahead to introduce us and state why he had brought John to my apartment. John had just escaped from Uganda, fearing for his life under the regime at the time. Some of us attending today will be familiar with this story. Patrick made sure to let me know that we might have different political convictions, but we all cared about our country's destiny and the need for to be there for each other. We then agreed to share our responsibility for supporting John to settle in. John had been robbed on arrival at the Akamba bus station and did not have any means of survival. Patrick would provide accommodation and I would provide meals while John found his way. We did not have to do this for long as John quickly found his way around and got a job as a teacher at a private school downtown and found his own accommodation in Eastleigh. A one-bedroom apartment, as that is all he could afford. John was in a hurry to get his own place because he had left Pase in Uganda and wanted her to come and join him as quickly as possible. They were expecting a baby, and he could not imagine not being there for the birth of their first child. Within about 12 months, John had established himself and moved to slightly bigger accommodation. Being the philanthropist he was and taking his family role seriously, John started bringing over his brothers and family members from Uganda, providing them opportunities that they would not have had, and quickly filling up his new home. At about the same time, I had completed my internship and had to move out of the doctor's mess. John found me a room on the same block where he was living, and I became part of the family. John insisted that I do not cook in my room and that I should have all meals with the family. He also did not expect me to contribute to buying the food in the house. I remember him always going to Marikiti to buy sacks of Irish potatoes and green peas, which were the staple at the house, and maybe what he could afford to feed such a large family. The tables had switched from me providing him with meals to him feeding me. This has always reminded me that you never know what the future holds. That is the John I got to know. For many years, we shared the life of a brother and a friend. We did a lot together and were there for each other. I'll share just two scenarios to show you who John was to me. After Pase had arrived in Nairobi and they needed to formalize their marriage, John asked me to be his best man and witness to their marriage, which I was honored to do. Later, when I needed to visit my future in-laws for introductions, it was payback time. John became my parent. When my mother was ill and eventually passed away in Nairobi while I was away in the US, John took responsibility until I was able to travel back and ensured that we gave her a deserving funeral back in Uganda. Our greatest bond was based on mutual trust and respect, but most important, in knowing that John would always tell me the truth, even when he knew it would hurt. Many of us will share our experiences with John, but I wanted to share this personal story to show you who John was, even when he did not have much to share. He was always a family man, a philanthropist, and truthful to his friends and foe alike. May his soul rest in eternal peace, and may the good Lord enable those of us still here to carry forward his legacy. Thank you.
Greetings, I'm Opiyo, Oloya, Associate Vice President of Equity, Diversity and Inclusion at Western University here in London, Ontario. I am truly humbled to say a few words at the inaugural Professor John Ntambirweki's lecture. Now, there is so much to say about my brother John. Of course, the word brother is sometimes used loosely as a term of endearment. In my case, I might have come from Gulu and John from Ibanda, but we were truly brothers. I first met John, his wife Pelusi, and two little children, Barbara and Brenda, in the spring of 1985 at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. He had completed his Master's of Laws at the University of Nairobi and enrolled at Queen's Law in the PhD program. Now, the very first day we met in their modest little townhouse, John decided we were brothers, and that was that. There was no arguing about it. As far as he was concerned, there was nothing he would hide from me. Issues would be discussed in my presence. He told me without mentioning his words, for example, to settle down and get married. That was John. John had a very sharp mind and very little patience. When he loved you, and he loved a lot of people, he gave you his full attention. He pushed himself to extend research in international law, which he started in Kenya. But he also pushed his wife Pelusi to do a master's in education. The evening at John's apartment were transformed into long strategy sessions. "You woman," he would say lovingly to Pelusi, "where is your essay?" And then he would turn to me, "My brother, what about your project? How is it coming along?" I credit John for encouraging me to get into graduate school. Well, to be very honest with you, it was more than encouragement. Okay, he just told me flat out, "Opiyo, you need to do your master's now instead of 2 years later." When I protested that I needed money, first, he said, "What money? I will work hard and I'll give you the money that you need." So the next day I borrowed his old Russian-built ladder vehicle and drove 2 hours away to the University of Ottawa to pick up the application form for the master's program. In those days, there were no online application. So we spent the next couple of days completing the application and writing all the essays that were needed to go with the application. And so in the summer of 1986, I was accepted in the master's program at the University of Ottawa. Of course, it paved the way later for my PhD. So that was pure John. He believed in education as the equalizer and was relentless in pushing his own family and extended family to get an education, to go higher.
Ladies and gentlemen, we all gathered here today in memory of my dear friend John. John and I met at Maggwa University. We were in the same residence, Livingstone Hall, and John was quite impactful in terms of how he interacted with me and any other persons that shared the vision that we did. And what was most important is the fact that John had the vision of having a united country, in the sense that we did not look at people from ethnic point of view. We look at ourselves as Ugandans, and that is why our bond became very strong and has remained very strong. And that will always be the biggest impact in my life, in seeing that although we are from different ethnic groups, we share the same views. And to me, John is a brother to me and will always be a brother to me, even in his absence now. But he lives through his wife, Pelusi, his 3 children, and he has brought into the world people who will carry his memory and the excellent citizens for the country and for the world. and we all pray for his soul to rest in peace. We all miss him and will continue to miss him, but we will carry on with the work that he had started.
So I met Ntambirweki actually at Makerere University because he was my lecturer of international law during my 3rd year at university. If I was asked to describe him, I would say that John was John. He was in his own league. You couldn't compare him with anyone. First, he was tall, athletic, and handsome. And then he was extravagant with his ideas and very articulate in expressing them. So when he was teaching us international law, it is rare to find a person with a command of a subject like him. I've studied in the best universities in the world: Oxford, Yale, Stanford, the London School of Economics, the London School of Oriental and African Studies. I've been to Columbia, to Cornell, to whatever university you can choose, Harvard. John is among the best brains I ever came across. So when he came to teach us international law, John always came with a chalk. He never came with the notes at all or anything. And then he would begin discussing international law. You could get a book, you could get anything. If you wanted to refer to a case, the headquarters opinion case of the UN or whichever case was before the International Court of Justice. He had command of it in his brain. I've never seen anything like that. I cannot remember any single lecturer in my life who taught me without notes and yet gave the best notes you could read. In fact, my international law notes, which I still have, I have lent them to so many people later who were going to study international law at different universities. But John dictated those notes without referring to a book. He had mastered the subject after so many years that it just fell out of him. So that is one. Extraordinary brilliance. But you can be brilliant and fail to be a good teacher. John was a very, very good teacher. He knew how to get ideas out of himself and inculcate them in the students in such an entertaining and intellectually stimulating way that it was so difficult for you to avoid attending his lecture. So attending his lecture was like eating chocolate or playing your most favorite game. Because I remember an incident when we were in the Constituent Assembly, me and my late friend Bob Kasango, attending a debate on multi-party politics. Those were the days when Uganda was basking with this idealism of creating a democracy. So there was a debate, should Uganda have a movement system of government or a multi-party system of government? The multi-partists were some of the best political intellectuals Uganda had. And then there was the Mshegas, the Kategayas, they were on the other side who were for the movement system, the Amanya Mshegas. So in terms of intellect, the debate was equally balanced. This was what you call a clash between brain titans. And it was so stimulating and of such national significance, you didn't want to leave. But then we had a lecture with John that same day. So we asked ourselves, we used to leave class at school to go and attend the Constituent Assembly debates. Me and Bob Kasango had to walk all the way from Conference Center back to Makerere University to attend John's lectures because they had no match in Uganda. There is no intellectual entertainment you get. Maybe the only competitor would have been Mohammed Mugdani's lecture. So that is one. But two, he was not only generous with his ideas, he was generous with his time. Because then we became his friends. I used to visit his home. His kids, like Barbara and Brenda, were little. I would play with them. His wife, I would eat there. So he would not only teach me, but he also parented me, mentored me, and gave me access to himself and his family and his home, and which is very unique. It's rare to find a person like that. I remember one time we attended a debate at Makerere University, and that's the picture you see, and there was Tajuddin, who was the head of the Pan-African movement. And you know, John was not keen on these things of Pan-Africanism, and he was very critical of socialist ideas, these left-wing ideas. But each time there was a debate between leftists and him on the right, between command economy and the free market economy. He would speak with flair and confidence. One could even, many people mistook his reverence for arrogance because he spoke with such confidence, and sometimes he, with some not so disguised contempt for people who are intellectually weak, that I don't know how to describe it. And then he knew how to accept the audience. Most people who speak very intelligently don't attract a lot of applause. But John was able to express great ideas with such simplicity, such humor, and such style that he would even move a crowd to understand and cheer what he said. The greatest intellectuals, like Daniel Kahneman, for example, he can never appear on TV with his Nobel Prize. He cannot appear on TV in a debate and be as command such presence. So John would combine his physical and athletic looks with great intellect, then humor and generosity and such extraordinary confidence.
My name is Alan Kasujja. I am a senior journalist at the BBC. I am the host of Africa Daily, which is a podcast that deals with African issues. And I am also lead presenter of Newsday, which is the biggest breakfast show in the world. It is an honor to be able to pay tribute to Professor Ntambirweki. And I want to say thank you very much to the family, to Mrs. Ntambirweki, to the children, Barbara, Brenda, Brian. Thank you very much for extending me this opportunity. My very first interaction with Professor Ntambirweki was when I was trying to get into law school. At the time, I didn't do well enough to go in on government scholarship, so I needed to pay my way through the course. So, a requirement to be an evening student was that you faced a panel of lecturers, professors from the School of Law, and they asked you questions. The questions varied from why you wanted to become a lawyer, whether you had the brains for it, the patience, the focus, and also the financial means to go through the course uninterrupted. And I remember, whereas all the other professors, Professor Kakoza, Professor Juko, I think, and others were asking me questions about my capacity to pay for the course and all other questions, Professor Ntambirweki wanted to know about me. Who am I? What's my philosophy? What are my aspirations? What are my dreams? His presence, his beard, his character, his level of engagement, that was memorable. And I met him a few times on campus. He was very gracious, always remembered who I was, remembered my name, kept asking how I was doing. And also, eventually, when I left to go and do other things, when I met him, it was a very gracious conversation. I think one of the things that I learned about him, about his greatness, was never from him as a person. It was from what other people said of him. And this man, if it was up to him, he would have wanted everybody in Uganda to be a lawyer. He was a teacher, a real teacher who concerned himself not just with the performance of the student, but also beyond that, the welfare of the student. There are so many people who have paid tribute to him since he passed away, and that in itself has been a motivation for me, a personal challenge. You know, when you hear students saying that I'm a lawyer now because Professor Ntambirweki took me to law school, and that I come from a family that could never have afforded the school fees, but I was given the opportunity to study by Professor Ntambirweki. When you hear people like my friend Andrew Mwenda saying that to them he was a parent and a friend, and in many ways a confidant. When you hear from women who sell at markets that he used to stop on his way to his home village just so he could buy from them, and that might have been the only income they had that day, that he remembered them, that even when he was unwell, he still stopped and interacted with them. That for me is inspiring. And that for me is the ultimate definition of impact. How do you live your life? You live your life to impact other people's lives. So if I'm gracious, if I extend anything, any courtesy to anybody, especially people who are much younger than me, it's because of people like Professor Ntambirweki, people who see you, who hear you, who see your dreams, and who help you achieve those dreams. His name will live on for a very long time. There will be people who will testify of his greatness for a very, very long time. I honor him so much, and I pray that he continues to rest in peace. But I also honor his family. I thank you again. You know, I honor Mrs. Ntambirweki. She's a fighter, a soldier. She epitomizes commitment, and there are lessons to be learned from that as well. And also the children that they have raised. Barbara, Brenda, Brian. May God bless you. May God give you the fortitude you need to continue with life after the passing of your great, great father. May God bless you all.
My name is Dr. Monica Magoke Mhoja from Tanzania. I met the late Professor John when I joined the board of Akode. He was such a joyful man, loving, kind, and the things which are very memorable to me is when he really strived to speak with me in Kiswahili. Habari ya Tanzania, hawajambo Tanzania, and he would be laughing and giving me stories about Tanzania. Wow! And you know, smiling, laughing is good for our health. And the very important thing which has reminded with me is his good leadership skills, especially when he was giving guidance, you know, chairing the board of Akode. He was such a man with wisdom, solving some of the problems very, very simply, a loving father as well. So, God bless you, love to the family. He has really lived a great mark in my heart, and I've learned leadership skills from him. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
My name is Josephine Odera. And I worked with John Ntambirweki, both at the University of Nairobi and also at Accord, Uganda. I first met John at the University of Nairobi around 1989. I'd just joined the teaching staff, and here comes this big, burly professor, and he addresses me as Josephine. I see you have joined the staff. And we had a good laugh around that. I could see that he was experienced already, and over time we got to talk and do seminars together, present papers at similar events, and then finally we met at Accord, where he was the chair and I became his deputy. What I found really interesting about John was his knowledge of African history, and also how he interacted with people, both big and small. I was particularly touched by how he was involved in Uganda's liberation movement, second liberation, I would say, and how he was so closely associated with many other struggles in Africa, and his close knowledge of what was happening in those countries. Of course, his knowledge on the environment was something else, and environmental law in particular. John was this sort of person who could make you feel big, even though you were small. He could make you feel very confident about what you're doing. John never set out to make people feel inadequate. He always brought out the positive in people and tried to help as many people as possible. And above all, he was a very jolly person, boisterous in nature, and a person that you could easily speak to about different things in life. I've taken over now as the chair of Accord and trying to walk in John's footsteps. Still feeling somehow inadequate because John could reach so many people and was always so very helpful. So we miss him, but we appreciate all that he did.
Hi, dear friends. I'd just like to say that I'm very honored to have been given the opportunity to say a few words in honor of my friend and colleague, Professor John Ntambirweki. I met John as a young lecturer at the University of Nairobi. He was much older, but I had just joined in 1990, and he had the office next to mine. And so that meant that if I had anything that I needed to ask, I stepped into his office. I developed a close friendship with him, and it is not surprising that when he went to work for the UN environment, I went and did a consultancy there and worked with him. I would also say that in later years, John and I met as academics of law, and we shared times without number how we wanted the legal landscape to be. John was an idealist, and he was a person who wanted to see good ideas come to fruition. I was not surprised when he left Makerere and went and founded the law school at Grocia's. And I interacted with him as a board member of the Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment. He was the chair. And each time that John and I met, we reminisced about our old days at the University of Nairobi. But we also shared how we wanted to see the law landscape develop. I had occasion to be the chair of the Kenya School of Law, And I met students that had come from Grotius Law School, and many of them were really grounded. And I did give this feedback to John. John was really a fine mind. Not long ago, I met a colleague, Professor Kelly. Professor Patrick Kelly is an emeritus professor at Widener University. Widener had a program that they brought to the University of Nairobi every summer. And we taught the students in Nairobi. They visited UNEP, but that stopped just before COVID. I met Kelly not too long ago. We had dinner. He had visited Kenya with his wife, and he asked me, "Where is John?" And he was really shocked when I told him that John was no longer with us. And he said, and I quote, "He was one of the finest minds that I had interacted with." That was John. I would say that we lost a gallant soldier. There were many people working on environment. Professor Charles Okidi rather, is famed as the father of environmental law. And if he was the father of environmental law, because I believe he was older than John, then maybe John was either the younger father or he was a grand uncle of environmental law. I would just like to tell the family, Mrs. Ntambirweki, we met when you just retired from UNICEF, when I came to see John when he wasn't feeling well and he was in hospital. And we knew you when you were in Nairobi. I would like to say that we lost a good friend, and I do look forward when I am done with my tour of duty as an international civil servant to getting back into the academy. And I can assure you that the university that you are now chancellor of will be one of the spaces that I will make a pit stop at. Barbara, continue to work on biotechnology. You are stepping into the grand shoes of your daddy, and we are here to spur you along. Thank you, and wish you all happy memories and remembrances of our friend and gallant soldier gone to be with the Lord.
I came to know the late Professor John Ntambirweki in the early 90s, but started interacting with him in the year 2002 when he became my lecturer at the Faculty of Law, Makerere University. Professor John Ntambirweki was very passionate about knowledge generation and dissemination, and beyond lecturing, he carried out research and informed a number of laws in this country. John Ntambirweki influenced my career as a researcher, policy analyst, and environmental rights advocate.
Minister for Local Government and Member of Parliament of Nyangabo County and the citizen of Toro. Distinguished guests in your various capacities, Bishop, Rwenzori Diocese, members of academic and administrative staff of this university in your various ranks, members of the academic community from other universities, the clergy, representatives of local governments, graduates, students of this university, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I have the great pleasure to be here for the 7th occasion to welcome you to the Uganda Pentecostal University to attend this congregation and witness the graduations of these young citizens of East Africa in the various ranks as will be demonstrated in the graduation ceremonies. I would now like to thank my friends, the graduates, who today will go through the transition from pupil to master. You came to us to study, and we have attempted to make you the best we could. We shall be happy with the persons we have instructed. An old theologian, Thomas Kempis, who lived between 1380 and 1471 AD, observed in his book, The Imitation of Christ, in chapter 16, that be not angry that you cannot make others as you wish them to be, since you cannot make yourself as you wish to be. We, the university, are happy to have done our job, and now release you to the bigger teacher, which is the world. In that bigger world, please hear and follow the teachings of those great men of learning, to whom we have exposed you. And remember to continue reading. Ladies and gentlemen, go into the world with modesty. Recognize your limits and your extent. Then you will be sure to go forward.